88.3 WXOU. Welcome to Sports Talk with Puckett and Pontzer. Austin Puckett here, Tim Pontzer to my right. We have a big show today, and we're going to be talking about the Lions in the first half because I'm pretty upset about the loss on Sunday. And last week, we do this segment that Tim likes, right, Tim? The what are we going to be talking about next week?
Oh, yes.
When we preview the Lions' next game each week. And last week I said we're going to be saying don't hit the panic button. And let me start off this show by saying do not hit the panic button, people. Mm-hmm. A tough loss, 25-21 to the Cardinals, when it seemed like when DeAndre Levy runs that pick six back, man, it seemed like it was going in the Lions' favor. It was going to be a not easy win, but a good win, a good solid road win, a good first road win of the season, and it did not turn out like that. So, Tim, give me a brief synopsis of what you thought about the game, and then I'm going to get into something that I want to talk about as our first major topic today.
Overall, it was a really disappointing loss. I know that both of us on the show last week picked the Cardinals to win, and a close game. I know in Vegas it was like a 1.5 point. It was basically a pick'em game. I think it would have been much different if the Cardinals were at Ford Field. But that West Coast trip, that was a big reason why I picked the Cardinals, and it kind of was that way. The Lions were sluggish at times. I don't know if that's travel or if it's the way that we were just on a live show here on WXOU, with Garrett and Mike Sullivan. They have a sports talk show on, and they were asking about the same old Lions question. And I said that I think part of it is, and I don't know if this is under Jim Schwartz necessarily or Lions, but especially the past 3 years, they really start games just kind of slow. And then they expect, well, we're going to pick it up in the second half. If anything, the script for that was kind of flipped with this, in that the offense was really moving the ball, but they had some key mistakes, notably 2 missed field goals that took points off the board. And then in the second half, the first half, Stafford was on fire. He had some really nice throws, 2 touchdowns to Calvin. The one, he fits it in a small window in between the linebackers, a really nice throw, and Calvin, goes the distance. And then the second half, he had 60 yards passing. It was really, it was like night and day. But those mistakes early on kind of cost him late. A questionable decision I'll bring up later, maybe right before the halftime by the coaching staff. And then overall, it was one of those losses where they were in the lead. They had the lead for really the majority of the game. Yet you still, in the back of your mind, you're like, when are they going to do it? When are they going to give it up? And the Cardinals get a last drive, and a Bill Bentley pass interference puts the ball on the 1 yard line, and ex-Steeler Rashard Mendenhall pushes it in, and it was just like, well, that was nice. There goes 4 hours of my afternoon on a late Sunday where the Lions just kind of, they played well, but they certainly didn't play well enough.
Absolutely.
And I know I'm talking for a while, but I think the most disappointing thing is, I think clearly, and I'm not a Lions homer by any means, but I think clearly the Lions are a better team than the Cardinals.
They absolutely.
But, you put them on a field, if this is, I don't know, a neutral field somewhere you meet in the middle, I don't know, like Kansas, they're going to beat them. And if certainly at Ford Field, but they went out there and they just did not play to their potential. And ultimately, it just was very disappointing to see them not come out of there with a W. I know we both picked them to lose,
right?
And this is kind of, and I'm not trying to hate on Lions. This is kind of what I foresaw.
Absolutely,
and it played out that way.
But the problem is when you're watching the game and you're thinking, at least I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be wrong, Awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to be wrong. And it seems like they do that to you every week, and that's where fans go to the same old Lions thing. Mm-hmm. And I refuse to do that because I really think it's a cop-out to come in and say that. Because just because you've been watching the team for the last 15 years, 20 years, 50 years, doesn't mean the team's the same, because the players don't think like that. So if you're going to use that as an excuse, it doesn't translate.
The 0-16 roster, which was only 5 years ago,
right.
Calvin's left.
Yeah, that's it.
And the long snapper.
And Raiola.
And that's it.
Yeah.
So you have a 53-man roster, and there's 50 new guys a completely new coaching
Right.
staff. Now I know you have some front office guys are the same, but mostly different.
Right. The other thing is that you can play that game with the playoff year. A bunch of the guys are
You
different.
can play with any team. I mean, that's
Right.
I'm a big Steelers fan. When they won here in Detroit, nobody's left on that
Right.
team. You know,
Right.
that's just the way it is.
Okay, so 25-21, Cardinals win. Let's play the blame game because that's what I wanted to do today.
Okay.
Number one, Scott Linehan, your second half play calling was absolutely terrible. The offense put up no points in the second half. Matthew Stafford put in, I thought, was a tremendous performance.
In the first half.
Exactly, in the first half. But guess why he didn't do it in the second half? Because Scott Linehan couldn't call the right play to save his life. It was absolutely terrible. Reggie Bush is injured. You have a 1st and 10 at the end of the first half, and I thought this is really where the play calling went downhill. 1st and 10 in the first half. Reggie Bush comes back into the game after leaving the game with an injury. Oh, 1st and 10. Oh, let's hand it off.
Yeah.
Hand it off to Reggie Bush, who's injured.
Right. And
how dumb can you be?
And I was texting you during the game. I was not able to watch it on screen per se, but I was following on and I listened to the entire game. I was coming back from Mackinac. And they were saying on the radio, they had the sideline reporter go in and they said, Reggie Bush, lower leg injury, we're not sure, it is severe. And there was talks immediately happened, well, he might leave the stadium and get an MRI. Then it was well, he's moving around, they put a sleeve on the knee, he's okay. And unfortunately, I think 2 points, the Reggie Bush injury may have changed Linehan's play calling in the second half.
But that's...
And
okay.
Secondly, I think it influenced that drive, and I wanted to talk about that. They had all 3 timeouts. They had a full 2 minutes, a minute 58. And given what Stafford was doing that half, especially what Arizona was giving them, 4 passes, they're down and kick a field goal, at least a field goal attempt. Very least.
Here's what I would say about it. If you have a successful first play, go for it.
Well, and what I would say, what I think influenced that is, let's see how Reggie's doing. So we'll use this drive and almost waste an entire drive and an opportunity for maybe 3, if not 7 points against this Arizona defense in the first half. Take a huge amount of momentum into the locker room. You just take the lead, not that late in, and they get the ball right back. It's let's take this momentum. Instead, they're we'll hand it off to Reggie and see how he does. Can he cut? Can he run? And then it was well, that's it.
Okay, but when it
they had 3 timeouts.
When it happened, I had no problem with them not being aggressive at that point. But what I did have a problem with was the play call. Why would you do that? If you're right, say they wanted to test.
I think that's because that's
Bush
what they were
out
saying
before,
on the radio.
and then they could work on him on halftime once again. Okay, but do a screen pass. Don't run the ball up the middle. Because if you're planning on doing a drive like you wanted and I didn't really care about, then do something that's productive. Line them up at receiver. I don't care.
You want to talk about the blame game? And I know this is kind of a controversial pick, but for me, it may fall, and not because he got hurt, but it would be possibly Reggie Bush, because he started out great. Then he gets hurt, and he influences the play calling and then his and a huge turnover by bringing himself back in, and he was on the sidelines, and of course Reggie Bush is a known commodity now, huge addition for the Lions. They're talking about him, and the sideline reporter's right there, and he says, he's he was angry, he's kicking stuff, but then he says to coach, I went back in, and I like that. Obviously, you want to see your guys come back in. I mean, Stafford made a lot of fans when he came back in with the busted up shoulder
against Cleveland,
but you also have to realize that was Stafford's non-throwing shoulder, and he was still able to complete at the end of the game. Now, if that happened in the first quarter, Stafford's not going to play the rest of the game. Reggie Bush needs to realize maybe he needs to just take a step back if he cannot produce, because they rely so heavily on him. I know he wants to be the guy, but let Joique Bell, you got LaShore back there for a reason too. Joique Bell played well as well. I mean, he's played well these first 2 games. Reggie Bush needs to realize that, he comes back, they waste that drive, and I wanted them to be aggressive. You have 3 timeouts, go down there and get 3 points, at least. And they could have done that. I was very disappointed by that decision, and I think that, at the end, you could have used those points. Now, obviously, you missed 2 field goals, but I think that can come back to bite you. I really do. Secondly, in the second half, he comes back, and he even said it after the game and took the blame for it. He says, I was thinking about the knee, and then he just fumbles it at the 5-yard line, and I give the Lions defense a tremendous amount of credit for not letting the Cardinals in. Yeah. But that shows you how much better the Lions were than the Cardinals. Okay, you gave them the ball gift wrap at the 3-yard line, and they can't punch it in.
But why are you giving Reggie Bush the ball? If you know he's injured, and if you blame Reggie Bush for wanting to come back in, that's fine.
And that's what I'm saying. I like it to a point. if you can produce.
Right,
Or even
but-
if you can be a decoy. But when you cost the team, and there's 2 examples of that right there,
But it's Scott Linehan's job to know
I
that
agree.
whether or not he wants to come back in, what he can produce for the team. And if he can't produce, keep him out there as a decoy. That's
exactly.
basically what Bush is anyway. It's a way for them to draw defenders into the box and have Calvin Johnson be open in the middle of the field.
Because at times they use Calvin as a decoy.
Right. So why, on Bush's first 2 plays back, are you giving him the ball and signaling to Arizona, hey, he can't play. He can't play well.
I mean, it doesn't say it much more than...
Put him in there and don't give him the ball. Throw the ball 60 times. I could care less. But if you have Bush in there, it makes them respect the big playability. And then maybe you give it to him once when there's only 6 guys in the box, and he can break it.
Because maybe, Joique Bell had a 20-yard run in the game. I mean, Joique Bell
played really well.
And that's what I'm saying. So, I'm sorry, Bush, but take a seat, come back for, Washington, and thank you. That's...
Blame game number 2.
Oh, I have one in my mind.
Okay.
Easily.
How about the field goal unit led by kicker David Akers? Yep. What the heck was that?
Yeah.
52 yards, you can't make it? Give me a break.
Well, 52 is a bit long, but the one...
Not really. This is the NFL.
He misses the first
Time
one.
to put your big boy
He misses the
pants
first
on.
one. Then they get a penalty. They move up, and he still misses it.
Yeah.
And then the one that got blocked was not his fault. The guy came around the edge and blocked it. I mean, that's the unit.
That's why
as a general,
I said
right.
field goal unit / David Akers.
We saw the punter, Miller or whatever, and he fumbled the snap in the first game. So the field goal unit hasn't exactly been golden.
So what the heck was that? Yeah. First of all, block, okay? Second of all, there's no statistical analysis here. There's no breaking down a formation. Do your job. Akers, make the field goals you attempt, and whoever blocks on that right side, block. It's as simple as that. It's not something that we're going to come on here and break down the X's and O's of. It's just simply do your job. And then if you do that, you have 6 more points.
And then for me, and you talk about same old Lions, maybe a same old Lion who routinely gets a lot of blame, and I would say rightfully so, especially in the pass department, is Brandon Pettigrew.
Yep.
Brandon Pettigrew at times can be just extremely infuriating. I mean, he's a tremendous blocker. And they always say that. They're like, hey, great job blocking. And that's all well and good. But in this offense, you talk about a safety valve for Stafford, but at times they design plays for Pettigrew to drag across the field and get that first down. And what's really annoying is the fact is, he's not and there's plenty of tight ends around the league like this that, just known for his blocking. When you're a first round pick as a tight end, you're not just out there as a to chip all the time. No, you're out there to make plays. And you saw that catch at the beginning of what could have been the game-winning drive at the end. He makes this tremendous catch. Yeah, and it's like, what is this? Where was that? Because, Stafford hits him right in the numbers, and he drops it on multiple occasions. It wasn't as egregious as in the Minnesota game, where he had, just an awful 5 minutes of football, where he, penalty, fumble, and drop, all. But he's a guy that just can be really frustrating because those kind of catches are ones that and you hear analysts talk about this that coaches look back on.
You know what it does? It
kills momentum,
and it doesn't allow Scott Linehan. Not that I'm defending him, and it doesn't allow Matt Stafford to trust him in a situation like 4th and 4, where you can run a tight end route up the seam, or you can make a stop route where you throw it to Brandon Pettigrew because you're not sure he's going to catch it.
And it eliminates a lot. I mean, when you drop those passes, I obviously I'm a big Steeler fan. Watching Monday night game last night. They have a drive, and Roethlisberger, great pass right to Kotra, and he just drops it over the middle. It would have been a first down. And then that leads to all of a sudden now it's 2nd and 15 and then they get a sack, and now it's 3rd and forever. But if he gets that catch and Boomer Esiason on the right, he's like, that is a play you look back on. Because when you don't convert the later play, and it's a bunch of what ifs, obviously, but Pettigrew at times he's the ultimate what if player. What if he could actually live up to a first round potential? When you and he was taken in Stafford's draft class, and I know when they came in, a lot of guys were like, this is going to be a great pairing. When you take guys in the same round and you can develop chemistry. Now, I'm not expecting a Brady Gronkowski chemistry or something like that, but when you're able to, he can not only be a safety, but like you said, design a play on a 4th and 4. You go, but Stafford can't depend on him. I mean, he just drops the ball.
Exactly. So you can't. I mean, that's why we'll get into, at the end of the segment, we'll talk about that 4th and 4 play, as well as get into next week's matchup against the Redskins. But now I want to we've played the blame game. Field goal.
Real quick, I'm gonna say, the other guy, and this is something, but Michael Spurlock, I saw the of him returning the ball.
I mean, that's one of those things where it didn't result in anything. So,
but it most certainly could have. And
yes.
I mean, you get rid of Stephon Logan and everybody. He was a favorite whipping boy around here, and now you got this guy. I mean, can't they find somebody to? I mean,
if there's ever a good time for that Dan Miller drop, what are you doing?
Exactly. And I know when they brought Bush, and I thought maybe he would return stuff. I know he's become a huge part of the offense, but I mean, you got to find somebody back there. Right. I mean, this isn't Dre Bly's not back there, but you need somebody quick and who actually knows what the heck they're doing.
Right. One more thing I want to point out before I want to get into a segment where we give people credit, units or people who played well in the game against the Cardinals.
Game balls person.
Exactly. I thought that, first of all, I mean, we have Akers, right? So we said Akers, we have Lenahan. We have the drop passes, specifically by Brandon Pettigrew, who had 6 targets.
3 catches.
And 3 catches. So, I mean, a 50% catch rate is not okay.
Yeah, Burleson had a bad drop. I mean, I can think Burleson had a really bad drop. And that happens. You got to play with that. It's not like Thursday night level of Brady, and they had like 16 drops, which is ridiculous. But you got to help your quarterback out as well. Exactly. Just like a quarterback's got to make guys. When you're putting the ball in a place where only your guy can catch it, you got to catch it, especially, I mean, some of those to Pettigrew, though, are just ridiculous.
Okay, final unit I'm going to blame. Where was the defensive line, specifically in the first half? 1 sack throughout the whole game. Yeah. Yes, they had pressure.
A lot of pressure.
I wouldn't say a lot. I thought it could have been much better.
I would agree, because on our last week's show, I said, hey,
and Nick Fairley wasn't in, which I do think had a role in that.
But I've said on the show, your defensive line is your greatest unit of strength. You got Israel Donajee, you got Jones you brought in. Those guys could start on other teams, and they're in your rotation. You have Sue, who's a number 1 pick. You've got these guys that should be able to make plays. And instead, you're absolutely right. I said on last week's show when you said, what are we going to be talking about? And I said, I think we're going to be talking about the defensive line, which we are, but in a positive manner. I thought that you looked at the Rams game against the Cardinals. They give up 6 sacks. Yeah. And Carson Palmer is easily, he makes Peyton Manning look like Michael Vick. He cannot move to save his life. I saw him for years in Cincinnati, and he's an older version of that. Yeah. He can't move. And yes, they brought pressure on him, and that DeAndre Levy interception, pick 6, was a direct result of Sue getting pressure.
Yep. But, which I thought was it was a lot of irony right there, too.
And absolutely. But you got to be able to, you're right, they needed a consistent pass rush. It's what the Lions can do with it, especially with the young, inexperienced secondary. You're able to only rush 4, not bring linebacker, and cover more gaps and zones, and that helps them. But if you can obviously get pressure without sending blitzes,
right?
I mean, that can create havoc in the second, and receivers can't get separation. But instead, when you're not getting that pressure, it's all for naught.
And I thought that the pressure could have been much, much better. And I feel like it was just disappointing that they only had 1 sack to show for it.
Because Sue had a good game, and he has 3 tackles, and 2 of them were for loss. But I remember last week, Sue had 0-0. He had nothing, right? But
it's not all about the sacks.
Exactly.
But it is part of it. I don't think it's not all about the sacks on an individual level, but on a unit level, because that plays a role.
He had better numbers than last, but they played a worse game, and it all comes down to that final drive. And Palmer had all day, for the game-winning one, where they get the best first. And they got to 3rd down, and I would give the Lions a lot of credit. Only 1 for 11 for the Cardinals converting on 3rd down. That's huge.
Yeah,
but. They just...
so let's get into... We mentioned Sue as he played really well. Mm-hmm. I thought he played really well. And I took notes during the game, just jotted down a few things on my phone. And one of them was Sue's having a big impact. I mean, he was disruptive. Like you said, he caused the pressure that created the Levy pick 6. The other one is Glover Quinn. Glover Quinn played really well all game long. And one play in particular, he had a tackle on Michael Floyd on the goal line following Bush's fumble, and that saved points.
Saved 4 points, absolutely.
4 points. So that would be the guys that I would point out: Glover Quinn and Ndamukong Suh, as well as just the whole Lions secondary. I was impressed by them. I thought they Fitzgerald did not have a big game, and I thought that they were good for how much pressure was put on
Fitzgerald,
Palmer.
I mean, that's kind of why I know I was going to bring this up. Fitzgerald was gone for like the entire second half. And really, you had, obviously, Calvin's a bigger playmaker, but maybe in this offense, Bush is a bigger factor than Calvin. And I know that, but they kind of canceled each other out. That's in my opinion. You lose Fitzgerald, or you lose Bush and they lose Fitzgerald. It's, it kind of just, it's a wash because now you go in there, and if anything, you should be better because you have Calvin Johnson. So, that's why I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, because we lost Bush, that's why we lost. Yes, but that's not the entire story. And you talk about the secondary, they did play well up until like the minute 55 mark when Bill Bentley just did an absolute terrible job, and that was the game-winning play, really.
Yeah, I mean, all he had to do was turn around.
Exactly. That's all he had to do. All he had to do was turn his head, and I don't think the guy's going to catch the ball. It wasn't a very great throw.
He had good positioning.
Right.
He just had to turn around.
And like I said, I was coming down from Mackinac. I listened on the radio, and Dan Miller was just like, well, and that's going to be a pass. There wasn't any rise in his voice. It was just very matter of fact, and I saw the replay a bunch of times, obviously different angles, and he was absolutely right. It wasn't like an egregious call. It wasn't like maybe or, a tough flag or, Michigan Notre Dame-esque from earlier.
Right.
No, it was like textbook pass interference for a ref. He didn't get a lot of contact. All he has to do was turn his head.
Right.
And he didn't, and that basically lost the game there because that was a third down play.
Yeah, if they didn't complete the pass, the Lions would have won.
I mean, you don't know what happens on fourth down.
Right.
I mean, but easily. That was a third down play. They're obviously going to go for it, but absolutely, it was a huge play in the game.
Actually, no, because they could have kicked a field goal for 22-21.
And that's, but what I'm saying is because then that influences your drive in the,
right, and it does. I mean, that would have occurred with more time left, also, and put you to have better field positioning and all that stuff. So Stafford, I thought, also played really well
in the first half, especially.
First half, he was 16 for 20, 210 yards and 2 touchdowns. Right. I mean, that's about as good as you're going to get in a first half. Unless you're like Peyton Manning.
In the second half, he goes 4 for 16.
Right, and then, but my note later on in the game was Stafford was getting no help in the second half because the drops, which we already talked about, and the bad play calling, which we already talked about. So a quarterback is only as good as the receivers that catch the ball for him.
And obviously Calvin is the best there is. I would definitely give a game ball to Calvin. He played tremendous, makes some plays for Stafford. 2 touchdowns for Stafford, but he had 1 catch in the second half. And
guess what that's the result of? Play calling. It's all to me. This game all comes down to Scott Linehan, and I thought he did a terrible job. Now I will say against Minnesota, I thought he was MVP. Scott Linehan was. It was outstanding. They moved the ball because of the plays that were called. And maybe he can't coordinate without Reggie Bush in there. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But I don't blame the players for that second half as much as I blame Scott Linehan. Now, obviously, everybody takes their blame in that, Stafford included. But in terms of the majority, I think it's mostly on Scott Linehan because of the play calling that he had in the second half. So, I mean, what else is there? I mean, go down to that last drive, 4th and 4. They move the ball a little bit, and you said while we were talking during the game, and you said Stafford can erase everything here.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen this countless times on any level. Any high school, college, pro, kind of whatever. It can be your mistakes, it can be others' mistakes. Ben Roethlisberger made a career of that. I know you, but where they would they always have like a great first opening drive, then they putz around, don't do anything, and then he wins the game and he gets all the credit. And whether it's deserving or not, but the quarterback gets all the credit because they make a drive at the end. And you could say that Carson Palmer did nothing the entire game, really. They kicked a bunch of field goals. Jay Feely hits from like 47, 48, 50, 30. I mean, they do that. They kicked 4 field goals. The best passer rating goes to Patrick Peterson on an end-around pass. Palmer does nothing, but that last drive, he makes plays he needs. Now he got a lot of time on that in that last drive, and then the pass interference happens, and Palmer gets credit because he leads the drive.
And there was pass interference on Patrick Peterson on Calvin Johnson on the last drive also.
Now, but at the same time, what I'm saying is and Pettigrew makes that great catch, and what I'm saying is Stafford had the chance to, and now I'm not pinning the blame on Stafford for the loss.
See, that's right.
That's what
I would say.
Now I know some have. I've heard some people. You see on Twitter and other stuff, but you pay this guy all this money. And you want him to be. That's what elite quarterbacks do. That's Joe Montana makes a living of that.
No, elite quarterbacks play well the whole game, which he did.
But
so
the whole game also includes that final drive,
right? And I thought he did play well in the final drive,
but they didn't score.
Yeah, but you can play well and not score. I mean,
well, you're trying to win the game. I mean, that's what you're defined as.
Right, but I mean, tell me a bad throw he made on that. Joik Bell dropped a pass, Brandon Pettigrew dropped a pass, and then Nate Burleson caught 1 2 yards short. I don't.
See,
I mean,
I understand, but what I'm saying is he had a chance to erase all the the illegal hands to the face play and the obviously that pass interference play. Those
illegal hands to the face was brutal. That was brutal. He didn't even touch his face mask. It was brutal.
But regardless, you have a chance to wipe that all clean and go back home with a win. And, they didn't, and they lost the game. But I'm not saying, Stafford's to blame here. The furthest thing from it, really. But a stat that I would, and this kind of goes, obviously a big part of it was, A, the pass interference, and B, the illegal hands to the face. But once again, they had over 100 yards of penalty yards. And I mentioned this in the Minnesota game, and I know you roll your eyes. I said, that's something I want to see toned down.
I got at this last week, and I just mentioned it. I am so sick of people talking about penalties. It is not relevant. It's not. Look at the Monday night. You watched that Monday night game last night.
I did.
Who had more penalties in that game?
The Steelers had 1 penalty.
Exactly. And who lost? The Steelers. The Bengals had 8 penalties for 80 yards. Guess what? They won. You can out-talent people. You can.
Yeah.
It's more than acceptable. And you know what? Willie Young said something this week, and I am so happy that he said it. The media asked him something about toning down the penalties, and they're like, what are you going to do to fix them? And he said, nothing. We're going to go out there, and we're going to play.
I mean,
You know what? I can admire him for actually saying, you know what? We're just going to play hard, and whether you like it or not, that's how it is.
Okay, I can understand that, but the game-winning play for the Cardinals, it came on a penalty, and a bad penalty.
Okay.
And that's what if that doesn't happen, then they're under 100 yards penalty. Obviously, they're sitting at 70, and they win the game.
Well, I mean, that one penalty was 25 yards.
I understand that. I get that. I understand that.
But whether they don't commit a whole penalty the whole game and then do that one, they still lose. So it's not relevant. It's just not.
There's a couple. I think it is relevant.
Think it's worth talking about at all.
I would say because it takes away a potential fumble recovery on Palmer, and then it takes away or it gives a touchdown to the Cardinals. That's what I would say. It's not a minor thing, but to me, it's something I would like to see toned down on.
If the Lions want to go out there and play like their hair's on fire, and whoever gets in the way.
There's a difference between hairs on fire and not turning your head around on a pass and getting the illegal hands to the face.
Well, I understand that, but that's you know
what I'm saying? Those are just stupid mistakes.
No, that's not a stupid. That's not a mental mistake. It's a physical mistake.
Well, it's just. I mean, to not turn your head around on a game.
But that's not a mental mistake, and it's
a stupid one. It's stupid.
Okay,
it's a stupid mistake.
But it's a physical mistake. It's a mistake that you made while playing the game. A physical.
Would you say it's one that's easily changed? You turn your head around. It's not that hard. And I'm not at any elite level of corner, but if the ball goes in there, you look at the ball. And I'm not trying to. But what I'm saying, it's a mistake,
right? But I would just say it's not like the Lions went out and had 40 false start penalties.
I understand that,
and that would be okay, come on.
But I'm just saying, when it comes down to it, 2 big plays for me where I have that illegal hands to the face, and then obviously the game-winning play.
Right, and you know what? If the Lions want to go out there and crack heads with people and they get called for personal
that's
fouls,
what I'm saying. It's different.
That's okay with it. I am.
I get, and I would agree.
You know what? Maybe this is just built-up frustration, but I'm sick of talking about it. I don't think it's a story.
See, I agree. And I get what you're saying. And I've seen it happen in the now glory days of a Steelers defense, where they would rack up 3 personal fouls a game, but they would still win games. James Harrison and Ryan Clark and Troy Polamalu are thugs, and they kill people, and they get flags based on reputation and based on bad hits, but they still win the game.
By the way, did you see that cheap shot on Sue? He was in the backfield, and the guard dove at his knees.
Didn't see that.
It was on Deadspin.
Regardless. I get that, but and that's if you still win games, obviously. But when you lose, and I'm just saying those are two penalties that could have been changed, and it's not even a matter of discipline. It's just two mistakes that are very frustrating, and it cut, and they're obviously not penalties, but other mistakes like those Pettigrew drops. Those are mistakes that can vastly change a game, and I would consider and. We talked about it there, but at that last drive, I think it was a mistake by the coaching staff to not be more aggressive. And you leave potentially 3, maybe 4 more and a touchdown points on the board. And that, obviously, you look at the score, that would have changed it. And it shoulda, woulda, coulda, but I think that was a mistake by the Lions coaching staff to not go for more. So those are just mistakes. And we talk about same old Lions. This was, and I said on the live show we did, to me, same old Lions, it's just kind of a all-encompassing term for many fans to just, after a loss, and I know there's been many in the past years, but to me, if you had to define same old Lions, it would be shooting yourself in the foot, beating yourself. And that's what I'm trying to say. The reason this loss is so frustrating, and I know it was very frustrating for you, a big Lions fan, is they beat themselves because they are a better team than the Cardinals. They showed it at times, but they didn't come out with a W, and they should have.
Okay, at Washington next week, what are we going to be talking about?
I think we're going to be talking about the continued ineptness of RG3, and I think that's going to prove dividends for the Lions.
Okay, so you think Lions win?
I do. I think they could win big. I think that RG3 has not produced. I know you think he's vastly overrated. He has not. This whole comeback tour over the summer, it has fallen flat. I would not be surprised if in the fourth quarter the Lions are up by double digits considerably, and we see Kirk Cousins trot out there. That would not surprise me in the least.
Okay, I'm gonna say Lions win. I think that what we're gonna be saying next week is that's more like it. And I quote, that's more like it.
I think we're gonna have big games, not just from Calvin, but
you know what? I want to end the segment on this
because Washington's secondary is brutal.
I want to end the segment on this. I am so confident that there's going to be some kind of play in this game where a Lion will either injure or somehow affect RG3's knee, and they will be flagged for it, and I will come on this radio show next week and be absolutely ticked because it's not going to be something that was worthy of a flag. It's just going to be the NFL protecting their boy RG3. And I would not be surprised if that happens. Would you be surprised?
You're right. I saw on ESPN when I put it up. The second story was that Pierre Garçon says RG3's knee brace is slowing him down. This is a story. It's been you're absolutely. ESPN had a whole documentary.
Sue will
on him.
Sack him, and somehow his knee will get twisted, and everybody's going to be like, "Oh my gosh, what a dirty team!"
Listeners, you have that to look forward to next week.
Right.
But you still can look forward to a whole nother second half segment where we are going to talk about
college football and
some
the Detroit
Tigers.
All right, so we'll be back after this break here on 88.3 WXOU.